The sudden death of my pa, James Edwards, left my ma, Nancy, a widow back in Louisiana. It was a hard time for all of us in the family. My ma, Nancy Ferguson, was born in Bossier Parish, Louisiana, near Shreveport in 1828. She sure was a thing of beauty in her younger days. She was a good mother and a very strong woman. I used to say she could whoop the pants off any man alive. She was only 35 years old when my pa, James Edwards, died. I was only 13 at the time. Well, we managed to keep the farm going for several years. Thank goodness we had Booker and his family, his wife Adelphia, and their kids, Edward, Thomas, Charlotte, Little Booker, Louise, and their baby named Sally. They were black folks who had been with my family for several years. In 1867, my mother moved all of us, including Booker and his family, to Milam County in Texas. It was a long trip. I was 17 years old, but for the young'uns it was a real adventure. You may be wondering why my ma waited for 4 years after Pa died before moving to Texas. Well, my grandma, Leah Ford, passed away in 1866, 3 years after my pa died. Her husband, my grandpa, Thomas Edwards, had died in 1843, some 20 years before. So my grandma Leah stayed with the family. When my pa died in 1863, Grandma Leah Ford was 74 years old. So my ma, Nancy Ferguson Edwards, took care of her until she died in September of 1866. That's why we didn't leave in 1863. After Grandma Leah Ford died, Ma really had no reason to stay in Louisiana. And we did have kin in Texas, so we moved to Milam County in 1867. Now, I know I've been doing most of the talking, so I'm going to let one of your kin fill in a few of the details.
Dad's grandmother loading the family up from Louisiana, and they had 2 horses, and I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 cows. They were pulling behind this wagon, and she told the furniture they had, and it was very little furniture, and she brought her family to Texas.
Well, you may be wondering why we moved to Texas in the first place. Well, you see, Dr. Erasmus Edwards, he was a close kin of my pa, James Edwards. Now, I'd tell you what the relation was, but I know you're still searching on your own, so I won't spoil it for you. Well, he had been writing to my ma, Nancy Ferguson, telling her to come down to Milam County in Texas. He was a well-known doctor in Milam County. Erasmus was mentioned in the Enterprise News Journal. Well, with the help of Dr. Erasmus Edwards, we settled on a piece of land in Milam County near the community of Lick Skillet, south of Cameron, near the Little River. The first winter, we lived in a lean-to just about. It sure was cold that first winter. I thought I was going to freeze to death, but Ma kept the fire hot. And of course, my ma's cooking was always good and kept us in good spirits. Now, as we settled into Milam County, we eventually bought land south of the Little River and began to farm. With hard work and a little time, we began to prosper.